All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. I want you to picture what is basically the ultimate tech thriller crime scene, okay? Imagine your phone slips out of your pocket. By the time you even realize it's missing, the battery is completely gone. 0%. It's totally dead. The last little spark of power has vanished, and you're just left with this vacant, cold piece of glass and steel. But here is the really haunting twist. That seemingly lifeless artifact, it might actually still be whispering its exact physical coordinates to the rest of the world.
I know, it sounds like absolute science fiction, right? We've all felt that sickening little spike of adrenaline when our phone goes missing. But the reality of modern hardware is, well, it's honestly way more fascinating and maybe just a little bit unnerving. How exactly can a cold, seemingly dead corpse of a phone still communicate from beyond the grave? It helps to think of your device like a prime suspect that's unwittingly leaving this massive trail of digital clues everywhere it goes. So let's unpack this massive, invisible infrastructure that's constantly tracking our every move. To really understand how we got here, we kind of have to look back at the incredible evolution of tracking. It started way back in the 1980s, where we just relied on very basic, early cellular pings. Then, moving into the 1990s, we started looking up to the stars with satellite GPS. By the 2000s, things got a lot more granular with Wi-Fi mapping. And that brings us to today, the 2020s, the era of modern sensor fusion. It is this incredibly deep, complex, and frankly inescapable web of technology that is just continuously working behind your screen. And yeah, that goes for whether you're using an Android or an iPhone.
All right, let's move into our first section, the alibi, the GPS myth.
So when most of us think about how our phone knows where it is, we just naturally assume it's talking to this celestial choir of GPS satellites orbiting thousands of miles above the Earth. Boom, done. But honestly, that is a massive misconception. GPS is actually the silent one-way street. Your device is only listening to those faint satellite whispers. It literally never talks back. Now, if we relied entirely on those traditional hardware limitations, it would be agonizingly slow to get a location lock. Oh, and it would bleed your battery completely dry in no time. Plus, the second you step between two tall skyscrapers, that connection just shatters. Instead, modern background processing is beautifully terrestrial. It uses low power and instant correlation right down here on the ground.
Because here is the truth. Your phone is never, ever truly silent. Even when it's just sitting perfectly still on your desk, it is locked in this feverish, desperate dialogue with the cellular network. It persistently confesses its location to literally every cell tower it can hear. And it does this using a really precise, almost radar-like mechanism called timing advance. Think of it kind of like a submarine throwing a sonar ping out into the dark sea. The cellular network pings your device and measures the exact milliseconds that signal takes to travel back and forth.
And through this relentless back and forth, your path is being perfectly plotted out. Imagine you're just speeding down a midnight highway. As you drive, your phone is constantly being handed off from one cell tower to the next, almost like a digital hot potato. The network tracks that entire sequence to draft a perfect, unbroken trajectory of your ghost moving through the physical world. And you know what the craziest part of all this is? This entire cellular dialogue requires absolutely zero satellites to work.
Which brings us to Section 2, the witnesses. Wi-Fi, and BSID.
Okay, so what happens when you step indoors, right? Say into a massive fortress of concrete and steel. Well, that's where the whole GPS alibi completely falls apart. You might think you're hidden, but even if you actually toggle your Wi-Fi setting to off, the physical antenna inside your phone is still restlessly scanning. It's memorizing the unique MAC addresses, which are known as BSSIDs, of every single router you walk past. Tech giants then take these addresses and match them against these terrifyingly expansive global registries. And if you're wondering how they even got that data, it's from massive crowdsourced telemetry and war driving. Think of those Google Street View cars. They have mapped billions of static routers to create a global grid. Because of all this ambient Wi-Fi noise, your phone can pinpoint the exact tile you are standing on in the deep bowels of a concrete megamall, and it does it in milliseconds.
Next up is Section 3, the mastermind, sensor fusion.
Now, with all these different signals, you've got GPS, cell towers, Wi-Fi routers, all existing at the exact same time, you end up with this chaotic, almost deafening cacophony of radio waves, and that desperately needs an orchestrator. Enter the true mastermind of this whole operation, the Fused Location Provider, or the FLP. This is a hyper-intelligent software layer that sits right above the physical chips in your phone. It dynamically arbitrates between all of those radio sources. It's essentially the wizardry that senses when you are stationary and kills that battery-hungry GPS, opting instead for a known Wi-Fi signal.
It seamlessly blends your physical, kinetic movement with that invisible ocean of radio waves.
Let's actually move to a relatable scenario to see how this builds in the real world. Imagine you are emerging from a deep, subterranean subway station. Obviously, way down there, you have absolutely zero GPS signal. But as you walk up those stairs, the gyroscope inside your phone physically feels the kinetic altitude change of your feet. Instantly, the FLP wakes up, activates, scans the overhead coffee shop Wi-Fi networks, and calculates your exact reality. Your map updates perfectly before the heavens can even answer with a single satellite ping. It is seriously impressive.
All right, let's move to Section 4, the conspiracy, offline Bluetooth.
So here we are at the massive plot twist of this whole explainer. What actually happens when your phone's battery completely drains, the screen goes black, and the device claims to be entirely powered off? Well, frankly, the software interface is basically lying to you. Under the hood, there is a secret reserve battery that kicks in to power a dedicated low-power mode. So your dead phone is actually emitting a continuous, encrypted Bluetooth low-energy whisper endlessly into the void. It's effectively sitting there, in the dark, saying over and over, "I am here, I am here." And this relies on massive ecosystems, like Apple's Find My or Android's Find My device, which essentially turn the general population into a silent dragnet. When a total stranger walks past your supposedly dead phone, their smartphone catches that tiny Bluetooth whisper. Acting as what we call a blind courier, that stranger's phone attaches its own GPS coordinates to your encrypted package and just flings it right up to the cloud. The stranger knows absolutely nothing about it, and their personal privacy is totally flawless. Yet their data connection was just seamlessly weaponized to help find your missing hardware. So yeah, your phone never truly sleeps.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the verdict, the digital footprint. Let's take a look at the staggering reality of what this permanently tethered node actually leaves behind as evidence of your physical existence. Because beyond just the location services running on your device, cellular companies are quietly keeping their own ledgers too. They record every single SMS and call detail right alongside your device's unique IMEI number. And that just adds yet another super persistent layer to this overarching tracking matrix.
And hey, if you ever want to see the culmination of all this data for yourself, just go look at tools like Google Takeout. It reveals what is essentially an eternal ledger of your entire life. I mean, you aren't just logging a few random dots on a map here. This system logs timestamps accurate to the very second, it logs inferred travel speeds, your exact modes of transport, and get this, even the proximity of other humans around you. It is quite literally a historical monument of your habits and your movements, stretching back for years. Ultimately, there is just this massive divide between what we see on our screens and what is actually happening behind the scenes. The consumer illusion is designed to be comforting, right? To us, it's just a beautifully smoothed blue line or a little glowing dot on a map interface. But the reality locked inside those corporate vaults, it is a chaotic, monstrous web of machine learning that is constantly, relentlessly processing millions of raw radio pings every single hour just to generate that simple illusion. So modern tracking is clearly no longer about just looking up at the stars. It is a marvel of modern engineering right here on the ground, and frankly, it's an inescapable shadow. As we wrap up today's explainer, I actually want you to do something. Look down at that glass rectangle resting right beside you, or maybe the one you're holding in your hand right now. Even if it's sitting quiet, totally dark, and seemingly dead, you have to wonder, what invisible signals is it broadcasting into the dark at this very second? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep questioning the tech around you.